Welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave, the Podcast Awards-nominated international spin-off from A Podcast of Ice and Fire, comprising a massive army of hosts and editors who discuss a variety of topics including movies, books, TV shows, anime, Ice and Fire novels, and of course Game of Thrones. My name is Glen, I am Dago Shivers from the Podcast of Ice and Fire forums, and I am honoured to be joined today by Patrick.
Hey, my name is PatricktheTall on forums.
And I'm also very delighted to be joined by Sam.
Hi, yeah, Sam. Samos on the forums.
So today's episode will be covering just an end-of-season review of the latest season of Game of Thrones, talking about some of the storylines, favourite episodes, big shock moments, and also delving into whether we'll be back next season for Season 6 or not. So we've all done a lemon cake score for each of the episodes. Some were like 2 lemon cakes, some were like 4. But just if you were to give an overall rating of the season and how it compares to other seasons as well of Game of Thrones.
Okay, well, if I can start, I would say that 5 being first season and 1 being second season with Where Are My Dragons and all that shit. Pardon my French. I would say this a 3. It was mildly entertaining in some places, and some places it just, in my opinion, didn't quite add up. Yeah, in general, I think it's okay, but only a few good episodes, and rest was meh to horrible, actually. Yeah.
And Sam?
Yeah, 3 to 3.5. I think, not a great season, not what we kind of want from Game of Thrones, but still, better than the majority of stuff you end up with on TV. A lot of it was well acted, some of it was well written. There were some lines that were quite badly changed from the books, and something didn't quite work, but, I mean, it was alright.
That's a great endorsement.
Game of Thrones.
That, Game of Thrones, that has to be my favourite season, probably because it was the first, it was the introduction to the story, and I think the first time I've seen anything like it on television. And then, so Game of Thrones would be my favourite season. I think maybe after that it would be Game of Thrones Season 3, then Season 4, then I'm not sure about Season 5 or Season 2. I did think that it did start off Season 5 with, so the first 3 episodes, I wasn't crazy about them. I didn't like them that much, but I think from 4 onwards, that's where it picked up. And then I'd say overall I would rate it 3.5 cakes for the full season.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on the ranking. 1, 3, 4, 5, 2 for me specifically. Would be
I think
because second season sucked so much. It really sucked so hard. You can't. It was really. I was close on just leaving on that season. So yeah, you're right. I think for me.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I'd maybe put Season 2 above this one. Not that Season 2 was particularly good, but I think this is the first season where there has been a storyline with Dorne where just every time you go there, you just kind of, time to make a cup of tea sort of thing. It really... It's the first season that had parts that weren't watchable, I guess is what I mean.
Well, I thought some of the parts were very watchable, I guess.
Well, some parts were fantastic.
I mean, some parts of Dorne was especially watchable. I'm talking about breasts, if you don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well done. Congratulations.
And that was also part of the joke. Yeah, and we can get into that later, but
yeah.
I think still... Yeah, I still can't get over Where Are My Dragons and all that. Less than niceties.
This season it's been most popular ever, so that's in the UK and America. I'm not sure about other countries, but so it's achieved its highest rating ever. The season finale, 8.11 million, I think, for the final episodes this season. and then in the UK on Sky Atlantic 1.6 million. So it seems to be up and up each season, which is good. So I'm not sure if that will continue, or maybe there will be a point where it will go downhill.
Well, if you believe the reactions on YouTube, then this will be the last season for a lot of people. Just because of this.
After the episode with Sansa, episode 6, and a lot of people were saying that would be it for them, they won't come back, and it seemed like that was true because there was such a big difference in viewership for episode 7 compared to episode 6, so almost 1 million viewers had switched off between those episodes, and the episodes this season have been like 6 to 7 million per episode. But then it seems like the Heart Home episode really saved the show, because then all of those people that had switched off decided to switch back on again, or it gained new viewers, and then it went up to like 7.8 million, I think, in America.
Yeah, I think one should always try and be careful when it comes to ratings, because just because people go out and watch something in the thousands doesn't mean it's good. Transformers. But yeah, I think I expect viewership to kind of keep on steadily going up because it's on HBO and Sky, and it's a little bit kind of inaccessible. I think it's like Breaking Bad, right? Breaking Bad's viewership, certainly in the UK, just kind of went up and up and up as word of mouth spread it. Even though it was really, really difficult to get somewhere where you could actually see it.
Oh, I thought it didn't actually become popular until it came to Netflix.
Well, I think illegal downloads of it went up and up and up. Because there was some story. I think just before it went on Netflix, there was some story. It was the first time Breaking Bad had beaten Game of Thrones in illegal downloads. And then it went to Netflix, and I assume that dropped.
Yeah, I didn't start watching it before it went on Netflix, but I heard a lot about it before that. So I guess it was the hype train had already left the station. But yeah, I guess you're right.
You're right though, Sam, that a high number of viewers, like a mega multi-hit show, having millions of people tuning in, that doesn't mean that it's good, but just that it was a big marketing blitz around that time, that there was all these articles in the press about people switching off because of the rape of Sansa, and then it only lasted a week because then everyone was watching again after the Heart Home episodes.
I think it's because the people who switched off after the rape of Sansa didn't switch off the show or got rubbish, they switched off because they were angry, which is fair enough, but I think you give someone a couple of weeks to settle down, and then they log onto Facebook and see, every single person they know going, "Oh my shit, Game of Thrones, what the hell?" And that would probably be enough to get you watching again, I think.
Yeah, it's the same thing for a lot of our regulars here on Wolfcast. I mean, we've gone from at least we've lost a few during this season. One of them being Tethered. He actually wrote me before one of the episodes. He wanted to come back, but he had forsworn the Game of Thrones, but then he wanted to come back and talk about it. Sadly, we didn't. He didn't. Our schedules didn't mix, and I haven't been able to get hold of him since. So he's probably miffed about something again. But yeah, it's there's been a lot of ups and downs in this season, one could say.
Yeah, I think the show can you can get away with the big scandals when you're really high quality. Like in season 4, the whole kind of Cersei Jaime thing was not a huge scandal, but it made a lot of people very angry, especially when they kind of ignored it the next episode. But I think you come back to the show because it was very high quality, whereas this season it's you don't think of Game of Thrones after you switched off and go, well, I do remember this season was absolutely fantastic apart from that one moment.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess right now it's kind of an anticlimactic feel. after this season, for me at least, I think that even though, the whole John story is looking to go the way we want it to go, it still feels sort of meh, right? Am I the only?
Just because it's almost identical to what happened in the books, that it still feels anticlimactic.
Yeah, but in spite of that, because I love me some books and some scenes that are close to the books. In spite of that, I still feel like the whole. I mean, I'm not as pumped as I was like after season 1 and even season 2. The last episode of that was at least enough to make me think, oh, this is going to be either horrible or great, depending on what's going to be on the next episode, next season. But this, not so much, for me at least.
Yeah, I don't know if that's down to, a couple of the beats in the last episode not landing. They felt good at the time, but I'm not kind of gonna go back and watch the Stabbing the same way I'd watch the Red Wedding or the Mountain versus the Viper sort of thing. I'm not. No, I don't quite know what that is about, because I thought that scene seemed to have been done very well, but I'm not all that emotionally affected by it, I guess. Whereas, maybe it's to do with the big event happening in the final episode, and there not being kind of anything in the way of fallout. Because, previous seasons have tended to, I guess with the exception of Tyrion killing Tywin at the end of season 4, they kind of tended to just kind of try and hit all of the notes in the last episode just to kind of give you a chance to recover from what's happened. This episode was a bit... I guess there was almost too much happening for anything to... Like, I was kind of just thinking of the storylines, and I only just remembered what happened to Arya, what happened to Stannis. I guess you kind of lost a couple of bits.
Yeah. I guess also it's like maybe the roller coaster was too wild, and at some point you just get used to the ups and downs and everything. I think that's maybe what happened for me, at least.
Yeah.
That.
I don't know. I think there's definitely an element of it. Especially as kind of big events starts happening 3 or 4 episodes out. Pretty much from Hard Home onwards, there were huge things happening all the time. You kind of... I don't know, the shock factor is diminished by them having too many, which, is, probably the most logical criticism of the show this season, if they tried to push kind of the shock factor too much, and maybe they just hit too many big emotional high points.
So, Hard Home seemed to get the viewers back, and a lot of people were talking about the show then, but then after that episode 9 you have the burning of Shireen, and that seemed to cause a lot of outrage within the fandom as well. So it's that was surprising for me that it ended on such a high note, that highest ratings ever for the Game of Thrones episodes. But then I'm not sure if that's just because it's a season finale and that's expected.
Like, how much were you... Kind of the big points, I guess, Sansa and Shireen. How much did those anger you guys due to how am I trying to say this? Due to being kind of upsetting because you had a relationship with that character, and how much was it you felt something was badly handled? Because Shireen didn't make me... neither made me kind of go and switch off the show, but Shireen didn't make me want to stop watching, whereas I thought the Sansa scene was actually a bad and unnecessary scene, I guess.
Well, with Shireen, it's not because people cared about Shireen. I think it's because people cared about Stannis, or didn't expect it from Stannis, and such because the plotline was such a huge difference from... Well, even though there's the interviews saying that it's going to happen in the books anyway, just people don't imagine that happening in the books. So I think where the outrage comes from.
Well, there were people outraged who hadn't read the books. If you look at the ratings changes, I mean, the majority of the people who watch Game of Thrones would be people who've never read the books.
Yes, but you have to also be reminded that a lot of the bad reactions are also from Americans that are... well, I don't know where I'm supposed to go with this, but without ending them. But essentially, some Americans at least are a bit prude, and at least in sexual, where it comes to sexuality and stuff. So, yeah, I guess that a lot of the reactions also you see is mostly from the Americans.
That's true, and it doesn't take very many people to be angry to make a lot of loud noise on the internet as well.
No, I guess you're right. No, I don't see this season as being better, and I don't think it's been... So from a book reader's point of view, I would say that at least I understand why it's so many from the forums are deciding not to go on, at least.
But I don't think anyone would be affected this season, so I don't feel I've been spoiled on anything this season, as far as I know, unless there's something that has been in the Winds of Winter chapters that I haven't noticed, but
well, I guess
it's irrelevant. I've not read them anyway.
I guess kind of you can think of Shireen as a spoiler of some kind, because she's definitely not going to play us. I guess the spoilers are more in who is left in the books and could play a part in the endgame and won't in the show. So we know in the books that probably fAegon is kind of irrelevant. We know anything to do with Shireen and her grayscale is kind of irrelevant. I guess I was going to say we were spoiled on the Night's King, but I guess that didn't actually tell us much that we didn't already know from season 4.
Yeah. I don't know, I guess you're right. It's just... It feels...
I think the danger is next season. That's a really pivotal point for a lot of the readers or people that are just not happy with the quality of the show. And I think... I said this in a podcast of Ice and Fire, that because this will rely on the show writers and there's less influence from the books, and George won't be involved as much on the TV show, that there's going to be a huge dip in quality.
I guess it's now good, and that's probably a good as time as any to ask, are you guys gonna watch the next season if Winds of Winter hasn't come out first? Because I think that's a big kind of factor.
Even if it were to be released and they were working to a deadline, so if it suddenly got released in March 2016, which would give us about 1 month to read the book, I'm not sure if I could read it in that time. I'm not sure if I could read it in time for when the show starts, but I'm guessing that would be the aim, like a tight budget, tight deadline to hopefully have it written and released, publicised, edited by the first part of the year, so January to March. But that's optimistic, I feel.
I don't know, I kind of feel if we assume it's only 7 seasons, once you've watched season 6, Dream of Spring is not going to come out before season 7, and I think if you've watched the first 6 seasons, you're quite likely to watch the 7th, no matter what. So I think there's a big advantage to them trying to get George to release the book before season 6, because I don't think I'd watch the show if the book wasn't out before the season. But if it was, I think I probably would.
That's what I was thinking, that there must be a lot of pressure on George R.R. Martin to release the book, or I'm surprised there's... Well, not that you would tell us, but there must be some pressure in background, because that would be maximum publicity for the book to have it released right around the time of the 6th season, and then there would be all this press about read it first before you watch it on screens and stuff. So
yeah,
the best way to maximise sales volume.
I think, it kind of depends, I guess, on... George seems to think he's quite close, and how much he's willing to bow from pressure from the studio, because I doubt... I think we'd know by now if he had a contract that said you need to at least release the 6th book. by the end of before we get to that stage in the show. So it depends on how flexible he is to them asking and how much that would require on his part. But I think he kind of wants to get the book out before then, no matter what.
Yeah, I think it's definitely in his own interest to get the book out before season 6, mainly because he wants a lot of the stuff to happen in his books before it happens on screen. I'm pretty sure about that. As would any writer, they would like to get their original thoughts out in their medium before it gets leaked or used in any other source. If it doesn't come out before next season, I've just been talking to my wife about this, and I'm not quite sure. I would say they're probably going to do something to lure me in, but yeah, everything about this season has been a roller coaster, and I don't really want to be spoiled. So if I possibly could stay out of whole spoiler-verse, I might, just because it doesn't have the same pull for me anymore as it did last season's.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, I'll read everything in the book first. But then I'd much rather be spoiled by watching the show than be spoiled by, looking through Facebook and seeing a picture of Jon Snow dead. Or, whatever, Dany dead or something.
Yeah, right.
So, I don't know. I hope the book comes out first, because it means I can put off that decision for another year.
I agree. I hope it does get released either in this year or maybe beginning of next year. But I remember when I did a podcast back when we were reviewing A Dance with Dragons and A Feast for Crows, and I said something like, I think it'll be released in 2014, around the start of Season 4, but I was way off on that prediction. But if it is released, well, if it's not, then I'll definitely still be watching the show, because I enjoy it. It's a great quality show. I still enjoy the show. It's something that I look forward to on a Monday night, and I'm just hoping that there's a lot of differences between the book and the show, that by the time I do read the book that I won't be spoiled as much.
Well, do you think there'll be a big surge in readers between now and the next season? Because if you're loving the show and want to start reading the books, I guess now's the optimum time, because you won't be spoiled in the show.
I doubt it, because they've had about 4 years to pick up the books, and they haven't by now. And when you pick up the books, if you're in the middle of enjoying a show and you've watched season 1 and you think, oh, I really want to find out what happens to the next characters, I can't wait. Oh wait, it's written down on the page, I can buy these books. And
but in the same way, we don't really want to watch a show that spoils the books. If you're a massive fan of the show, will you want to read a book that might not be your sort of thing before you watch the show, before the show gets there, if that makes sense?
I'm just thinking that if you haven't decided to read the books by now, that probably you won't, especially if you've been watching the show for the past 4 years.
Yeah, that's true, actually, because I started reading the books after season 4. I went in with the attitude of, I'll read Game of Thrones, and if I don't really like the book, then I can stop then, and it won't spoil anything for me. So I guess, there's enough material for you to decide on that.
I see both your points. I see how it would work both for people who... I guess after every season, there'll be people who think, well, maybe I should pick up the books then. Maybe I should read them now. I have like a year. The DVDs doesn't even come out until February next year, so I can't like watch them again unless I have like a yearly subscription for HBO. So I understand why. I can see why some people do that, and I guess it happens every year. But also, we're now getting into next season is season 6, and if people is not invested enough in it already, then they won't ever be, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, as we said earlier, the ratings for the show are going up. So, more people have now watched the show than had this year.
Yeah, but I don't think that there will be a surge, like more than normally.
More than normal, yeah.
After a season. That's what my point is, essentially, that I guess this happens every season. That there's a surge of people buy the books to read them and see what happens. And sadly, they will be disappointed this time, because there is nothing more in the books, at least for now.
A counter question I have is, do you think that, so we've had information in that if anyone's read Not a Blog by George R. R. Martin, so his weekly daily blog that he sometimes updates progress on the writing of the book. So if he was to be at a stage where it could be released next year before the show, that he must be hiding how much progress he has made on the book, because at the most, I think the last thing we heard was he was a quarter done, and that was about 2 years ago.
But I think, he's made it very clear that he doesn't want to make predictions about when books come out, because he's been wrong so many times and people get angry with him, which is kind of unfair. But I think that he doesn't want to put himself in that situation again.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also that you have to remember that George does not write in a linear fashion. He writes chapters and writes characters, and then he writes something more for something else. It's like both like in other stories like Wild Cards or whatever, but also just material that will not be used in this book, but might be used in either like a source book or the Dream of Spring that he hadn't written more than a quarter 2 years ago. Might be indicative of how quickly he writes normally if he focuses. And other than that, if he is at this point close to releasing Winds of Winter, what's to say that he might not already have like half a book for Dreams of Spring already written, because that's just how he does.
And I mean, there's definitely an argument that says, by the time he finishes the 6th book, he has to know in pretty good detail everything that happens in the book.
Yeah.
Because he's not, you would assume there's not really filler some book though.
No, yeah, it's essentially the whole puzzle thing where you when you're like 2/3 through the puzzle, everything starts to go faster and faster and faster, and at some point you know where you're going, you know what you have to do. And I think that's also what's happening here, or at least that's what I'm hoping is happening, that because so many things are starting to align, that it has to be aligned properly. He can now actually, see where he's going, and therefore he might have to use a little more time to just notch it right in the right direction. That's at least my hopes.
My hope is that if it's not released next year or before the 6th season, that maybe it takes a bit longer for him to publish the book, maybe 2017 or late 2017. That be by that point I've forgotten what has happened in the show and it's irrelevant by that point, so I'll read the book with fresh eyes.
What? No. No.
That's a selfish point of view.
Yeah, he's getting it out as soon as possible. Either way, this I've had prophetic statements before about George, so this is another one. He's gonna be out soon.
That sounds good to me.
Sounds to be vague for a prophetic statement.
Well, as prophetic statements go,
that's how they're supposed to be.
Yeah. So,
do you think there's any other book in the world that's more anticipated than The Winds of Winter? So I was sort of thinking about this today. Is it like the most eagerly awaited book in the world, or is there anything else that's quite big in the publishing world?
Bible
at the moment or ever?
Well, ever, because there's been bigger book series, but I mean at this moment in time, or this year or next year perhaps. Dan Brown book released soon, another one, and that'll get millions of sales, but just there's nothing else that I can think of right now that I'm looking forward to that will be released as part of a series or a new book, for example.
No, well, I mean, I haven't tended to read kind of a lot of these kind of big fantasy series or whatever, but I think anything that's not kind of canon, I guess, that's not advancing a plot towards its finish isn't going to be as hotly anticipated. Because if you think about it, A Song of Ice and Fire is kind of one massive book. But I mean, each book's not kind of... You couldn't pick up a book and read it on its own, whereas a lot of series you kind of could. And I think you wouldn't eagerly await the next... I know Dan Brown's a good example. In the same way you would the next book, because it's kind of... You're just excited to see the next Dan Brown book. You're not wondering what happens next. There's not the tension, I guess.
Unless it's going to be like the Da Vinci Mystery 2 or something weird.
But that's not... It's a sequel, but it's not... I mean, not that I've read Da Vinci Code, but I've seen the awful film. And like that had a beginning, middle, and end, right? You can read that on its own without reading whatever the other book in the series is called.
Angels and Demons was and I hate to talk about this, but I really have thought about why I'm so obsessed with George's age, and I think a lot of people are obsessed with it because those people are the same people that man ending final conclusion to everything.
Well, I've read reviews. The Wheel of Time is something I've always wanted to read, but I've never really gotten around to it. But I've read reviews that a lot of people were impressed with Brandon Sanderson, and that when he started writing for the books after Jordan had died, that brought an uplift to the series, that it had returned to form. But I guess there's still a disappointment that the original author didn't finish the series. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, what is it, Christopher Tolkien finishing the Silmarillion. I mean, we're happy that the Silmarillion is out, because a lot of things would have... The world would have seemed a lot bleaker without it. But both ours and Middle-earth. But I think for a lot of people it's not the same, as I guess. They just wished the true author, the creator, was still there to put the final touches on it and make it like the thing, to be sure that it was exactly what the creator wanted it to be, essentially.
I'm sure I read that he's got it in his will that he wants all his notes burned if he were to die before the series concludes. Yeah, I guess. And that makes people even more like on edge, because even if it's like that, if he potentially, and we shouldn't talk more about this because he hates this, and it's really not very polite either. But to talk about his whenever when that happens, yeah, mortality. Yeah, if he were to, I think people would just take that they could, which mean they would get a product that will be smart. A lot of people write exactly like George. They don't have take as George has, being both from the television world and a distinguished writer through many years. So
yeah, I think I personally rather have an unfinished, authentic book series than have it changed. I think if you, and the same goes for music and film series and whatever. I think there's a certain, I don't know, it's enough. It's enough of a form of art, the way he's written the series, that it's not that someone else finishing the series would make it a very different story, I think. Yeah, I'm not quite saying where I'm going with that.
No, but if you have notes for everything left behind,
but it's not. I guess, right. So this is part of the issue with I'd rather read the books than watch the show to get the ending. It's not just hitting all of the plot points that makes what George does a good book. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably think quite differently on it if I thought that there was a realistic chance, that it wasn't going to get finished. But if you look at when I was younger, I was into kind of Robert Ludlum novels, which they're not the greatest books ever written, but he wrote the Bourne series, kind of, which vaguely got made into films, and then someone else came along and wrote another trilogy. Kind of with consent, but it's not, even though it's probably had a similar plot, it's not the same book. Like, you wouldn't ever confuse one with the other.
It has been a long time since I've read anything like that. Someone commenting on George's age, but maybe I'm not reading his blog enough, or not reading articles enough about him.
No, I think it's a dead horse, and people... pardon my analogy. It's essentially you can't keep beating it. And even if you could, it's still like we shouldn't be talking more about this. They know that it's just not going to work with George either. He is done with stuff like that. He says he has essentially gone out on public television telling people to fuck off if they keep on talking about his age. And I completely understand. I mean, I wouldn't want people to talk about my mortality either, just because the motivations about it is so selfish. It's like, it's not because you fear for George's life, not because you want him to have, you just want the books out. That's what you want, and that's very selfish. And to be talked about your mortality from people who are essentially don't care about you as a person, that's very insulting, I guess.
Yeah, I think it would be. It would still be insulting, but it'd be a very different thing if he was ill. But he is a healthy man. It's not. It's
sorta.
It's not. It's not like he's going into hospital and things like this. Like, it's us looking from the outside, going, "Ooh, you don't look like my epitome of a healthy person. Therefore, I'm going to decide you're close to death." It's just blatantly rude.
I can see your point. That it does seem rude, and it's not something I would. I've never said it myself. Never thought it myself. And if he were to die, and then 6 months later we have unknown writer first writing job, and he's got, he's written the sequel, or he's written The Winds of Winter, or some combination of The Winds of Winter and A Dream with Spring. I don't think I would read it, because it would feel like reading Rhett Butler's People or Scarlet, which I've never read myself, but it's not the same when it's not the original offer.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, it's the same thing as when people go around releasing posthumous albums. It's what the artist wanted to be released is what has been released. Anything else is just a money grab. Anyone who came around and wrote The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring wouldn't be doing it because they feel the public need that story to be told. If they thought that was true, they would release the notes. What they're doing is they're saying, I think I can make money out of this.
Yeah. It's like TuPac.
George is a lot like TuPac.
Yeah, he is. He's the OG.
So, of course, TuPac isn't dead. TuPac is just in hiding. Have you heard that theory?
Of course I have. He's actually the secret protege of the alien Elvis. And they're both from the same planet, but they can only stay in this world for so long without their appearance being and their nature being shown. So they have to go into hiding after a certain time.
They're just too good for this world.
Yeah, they really, really are.
Well, we can
anyway.
move on from this.
I guess.
How about we talk about favourite episodes from season 5 of Game of Thrones?
Dude, is there any discussion about this? There's one good episode.
I don't agree. I didn't actually rate Hardhome that highly, and I'm sort of bored by the battle scene. I would say that, I mean, it was good to watch, but I think it pales in comparison to Blackwater and Season 4, Episode 9, where it's the Battle of the Wall. I can't remember the episode name.
Watchers on the Wall.
That's it, yes.
But yeah, I think it didn't have the emotional weight of that. I mean, I think, even though there was one small moment where I thought Jon was going to die, there was never any real threat in it, I guess. There wasn't that emotional link. What did it tell us? It told us that the others were very powerful, right? But in terms of a well-executed scene, I thought it was, it was a very, very well-made scene, I guess.
Yeah, and the memes, all the memes that came out of it. I mean, every single news bureau that wants to have a heading uses the whole Night's King raising his hand and thereby raising the dead meme. I mean, we did it like twice or something on our forum. So, yeah, I'm just saying, in this season, I guess for me, there's no real discussion about that specific episode being just a hand's width higher than the others, better than the others.
A lot of people seem to feel that way as well, that it's across the forums, it seems like it was the highest rated episode, and a lot of great reviews for episode 8, so that's good news. For some reason, I always have episode 4 of a season always seems to be my favourite episode of the season, so I feel like this season, episode 4, that was my favourite. I'm not sure, I can't remember why, it was so long ago. But also season 3, episode 4, that was a favourite of mine too, and I think season 2, episode 4 as well, so it's like a running trend.
Yeah, but I definitely agree. There is a tendency to that the first 3 or 4 episodes are really strong in each season, and it sort of just falls to the ground
around the middle of the season.
Around the middle it's just it falls to the ground like a piece of toast with a cheese and marmalade on, like clap, and then you try to pick it up and scrape off all the dirt, but it's still not as good as before you dropped it.
Do we think that's because those are the episodes which are written by other writers, or do we think that's just because, you get the start, that's exciting, you set up all of the plot lines, and in the middle you tend to kind of fall into this meandering, getting everything from point A to point B?
I think it seems like, so the first few episodes, that's to hook new people in, that's to entertain the people that have decided to come back to the show, and then in the middle they can maybe lapse and not have as many exciting moments, or the writing lapses a bit, but then towards the end of the season, so episode 8 to 10, that's when they need to focus on getting the people that are watching to come back next season, so I think maybe that's something to do with it.
Yeah, so just so I have a list of the episodes here, if you the writing, the first 3 episodes and the last 4 were written by Benioff and Rice, and they're kind of clearly the ones that they really cared about, and the ones in the middle were written by Dave Hill, who I don't know who that is, and Brian Cogman, who is a writer on Game of Thrones. That's about it.
Brian Cogman is probably the best, in my opinion, usually, because he is like the true book reader among the writing staff. So
I think Benioff and Rice are book readers. I don't think you can argue with that.
No, but they don't.
As is George.
But see, usually the George episodes are also pretty good.
But he didn't write
but that's not the point, and especially not on this season. He hadn't been written any episodes.
No.
So
I agree. Brian Cogman does seem to be the most passionate about the books, and brings a lot of book elements into the show as well that seem to be skipped by other writers of the show. And he's also great on the. I'm not sure if you ever watched the DVDs or the audio commentaries, but he seems like the most interested in the books in the audio commentaries. Yeah,
and especially, David and Dan has specifically come out and said that Brian Cotman is the lore master. He sometimes when they go through the different scripts, which they do before they show them to the actors, he usually says, "Well, that couldn't be that isn't possible, not only because of what's happened in the prior seasons, but also because what's going to happen in the books and stuff like that." So even though that David and Dan has read all the books, they're not as interested in the details as Brian Cogman is, for sure.
Well, I guess to some ways that works to the show's advantage. If you had showrunners who were trying to stick word to word to the books, there would be some things that wouldn't work. I'm not saying they shouldn't stick closer to the books, but some things need to be changed to be put on television. And if you were as passionate as kind of we are about saying, it should be the same, why was this not in there? Where's Strongbow was? Then you'd probably end up including things which didn't need to be in there.
Yeah, you're right, and I think that the best. The way I would have preferred it was specifically to have everything as close as possible, unless it didn't make sense financially or stuff like that. You can't have all the battles with all the horses in every show, in every season, and in every episode. But so that makes sense why they cut it down and make it every time Tyrion's in a battle, he gets knocked out 2 minutes in, because he's the point of view character, and when he's out, then there's no fight left. That makes sense, but in other sense, when they change things, because even though they don't have to, even though I don't see any specific point to it, which might be just me being ignorant as a non-show writer, it just detracts from the whole thing. And I think that Brian Cogman specifically is very good at making solid episodes that has a lot of book material in it. He works it in different ways. He doesn't necessarily stick complete to the books, but he throws in mentions about Dorne or whatever long before Dorne is a specific place. I'm sad that they then dropped the storyline then, but yeah, essentially I'm taking my hat off for him. He's my favorite writer, at least.
He's my favourite too.
Just to throw a curveball in there, this season he did write Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken, which was the one with the Sansa scene in it, and it was one of the episodes where basically not much happened apart from that as well. Which isn't his fault. He did the actual kind of screenplay writing on it rather than the overall plot writing, but I would say it was probably the worst episode of the series. Not that I'm disagreeing that he's very, very good at his job. I'm just kind of devil's advocate.
Yeah, you could say that, or you could also just say that he kind of wrote in. Well, I'm not defending that specific episode, but I'm just thinking that specific scene and whatever happened was sort of foreshadowed. And you kind of knew that. Well, we've talked about that a lot before. That was probably going to happen. Some sort of Jane Poole-esque wedding night, and it happened. So he sort of just had to work with what he had. And if you want to believe like Sander and Matthew, a lot of people were at least thankful that they didn't get the full Monty, at least.
That reminded me of, I think it was an episode in season 3 when there was a lot of criticism of the show because there was a fight scene between Bran and the Hound, and it was an episode written by George.
Yeah.
But then it turned out that it wasn't a scene that he had written himself. It was something later filmed by another writer that had written the scene, but it was moved to that episode. Not to say that Brian didn't write that scene, but I guess parts of it could be like moved around, I guess.
Yeah, not so much moved around, it's just that he had to write what he had to write because it had been foreshadowed in like 3 episodes before that. So he didn't have very much choice about that, and that and some people are actually thankful that it was done in that specific way and not more explicit. That's essentially what I've been hearing from, at least from the podcasters on that episode.
Yeah, I mean the problem with that kind of scene in of itself is not the way that was written. It's the
action of the scene. What's happening in the scene.
I just think in the books it developed something, and in the show it just reiterates Wendy is a monster, Reek is broken, Sansa's a victim, which is an unnecessary scene. I guess it's the argument against it, and then you then have to include the show's history, which hasn't been terribly good when it comes to sexual violence. Yeah, not necessarily to get too deep into that again, but I wouldn't. That's not what I would just say that. Just looking through the rest of the episode, had some more of the earlier scenes where it has a scene between Tristan and Bella. It has a bit of chatting between Jorah and Tyrion. It's not. As an episode, I thought it was quite weak, even if you ignore that final scene.
Well, I think you've kicked off the next discussion, so you've made your feelings clear about episode 6, Sam, as your least favourite episode. What about you, Patrick? What's your least favourite episode?
I mean, I guess I agree. As people might have heard when they listened to the Wolfcast for that specific episode, it really hit hard. As a horrible scene, and it still makes me sad to think about. So yeah, that ruined that whole episode for me, and I know that's very unprofessional of me, but I can't look past it. So yeah, episode 6 as well, right? Yeah, episode 6.
Oh yeah, episode 6 did seem to get a lot of hate. A lot of people did hate the episode. They didn't enjoy it. It was maybe the worst rated episode of this season. You know, a lot of people were saying 2 lemon cakes. Bowl of brown scale, but I really enjoyed the episode. I think I rated it about 3.75 lemon cakes. It wasn't my favourite episode of the season. The one I least enjoyed would have been, I think it was in the first 4 episodes. So it was either episode 2 or episode 3 of season which were my least favourite. So I think that episode 1 was a quite good explosive episode, but then it was sort of subdued with episode 2 and 3. So I'm sort of thinking that it was episode 3 that I least enjoyed of the series, but I still can't remember why. But that was just gut reaction of how I felt about the show.
I think it's been interesting this season how they've had more, obviously very difficult material, but more to adapt than any other season. But kind of because of what they cut out, and it was a lot of fairly meandering storylines anyway, it's kind of felt like the most plot season. Kind of shot themselves in the foot, leaving out Nine Islands. Because that would have just removed a little bit of time. You could cut a couple of hours, and it would have made the whole thing feel a lot tighter. Even if you don't want to go anywhere with it. I mean, you could almost into Quentin just to almost fill time.
Yeah. And Victorian, I mean, if Victorian was there, everything would have been a lot better run in the season. I mean, he could have just
solved the problem.
Yeah, should have sailed. He would have been the guy who sailed Jamie and Bran down to Dorne, and he would have been. He would have saved Marcella because he has special flaming arm powers now and stuff like that. He would have saved the day in every single season. He would have even saved Barristan. I mean, because that's what he does. He's like the savior. He's the prince that was promised. Oh, you think I'm joking? But he is. He truly is.
Oh, you
I mean,
genuinely believe that?
I mean, that's just as good a thing as a lot of the other ones. I mean, of course, there's more to show that John or Dany might be, but that's the only two people that has legitimately more claim to that post than anyone else, in my opinion. Because the whole reasons why Victorian is actually the prince who was promised is because he is now a prince. He has been reborn among salt and smoke. He has killed his wife like the Misa Misa to become another person. I mean, everything fits.
And I do like the idea that just as Mel thinks that Stannis is the prince that was promised, we all kind of go, oh, you know, Jon or Dany has to be Azor Ahai, because Jon's probably going to be reborn amongst smoke, and Dany's literally born amongst salt and smoke. She literally has dragons. You know, she has the brother dragon, and all of that. And I do like the idea of Victorian. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think it would be a cool way to tell the story.
Yeah, I'm saying I know there's people that has a better claim to that post that are more likely, but I'm saying that everything fits on him, and he is one of my favorite characters by far. So I'm still rooting. Like, people are rooting. Some like Greg might be rooting for Stannis to be something more important and not to be killed. The same way I'm in the same way then rooting for Victorian.
And I do like the idea of the prophecies in the story being either not accurate or being self-fulfilling, because Cersei's prophecy is more or less self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of a good lead into the idea. I mean, the idea that if you take Jon to be Azor Ahai, then you could argue that Mel acting on that prophecy to bring Stannis thinking he was Azor Ahai feels like that makes the prophecy happen. If she hadn't heard the prophecy wouldn't have happened. Yeah, you know, the idea that everything's kind of forewritten.
My favorite prophecies are also the self-fulfilling ones. That's very poetic.
Well, like in Harry Potter.
Yeah, or Oedipus.
Yeah, that's a much more literate reference. There's a show on Sky in the UK called the South Bank Show, which is this guy, Melvin Bragg. Basically, he interviews artists from all different walks of life, writers, musicians, dancers, whatever. And one of the episodes of this series, he actually interviewed George. And there was a really great quote in there, which I'm not going to be able to quote word for word, but basically George said, after Tolkien, a load of people, including me, have looked at his massive world and faked it. So written a story that gives the illusion that there's this whole world around it, but doesn't really have that backstory. And you look at... But since he stopped faking it and started actually doing it, if you look at the kind of... the big selling kind of fantasy series, your Harry Potter, the Culture series, where Ian M. Banks, Wheel of Time, Song of Ice and Fire, they all actually have that universe. It's about building a believable universe. You can't actually fake it.
Yeah, it's an established universe. You need to feel like there's a place for all the characters there, and they come from different places, and there's a reason why they act like they do, because of their upbringing or the region they've been brought up in.
Yeah, I think it's very much, and it's the way kind of George certainly did it in his early books, is you set up these characters and you just kind of throw them into the world and they act like they would, and that builds your story.
Yeah. I like that specific way of doing it, because it takes less effort than going through the whole Tolkien way of building your world first and everything in it, and then putting characters in that do specific stuff that you want it to. Instead, just make a world, like a sketch of a world that seems believable, and then put more focus into your characters and make them like expand the world for you.
Yeah, I think that's, going back to what we talked about earlier, I think that's why George has kind of slowed down his writing the further he got into his series. It's when you start getting people to try and hit certain points, it then becomes very, very difficult to kind of, you've got these characters, you let them get kind of all dispersed, and you need to bring them back for some kind of conclusion.
Yeah.
And that's when you struggle. You need to work out a believable way of doing that.
Yeah, it's essentially my point. I think that I talked about beforehand. That I think that George has the problem now that he wants his ducks in a row. Yeah, ducks in a row. He wants them aligned to whichever end he has planned for them. And that takes a bit more work. Like the Myronese knot in the last book, he has now some sort of plan for where they need to go, but he needs to get them there in a believable way. And I understand why why that can take a little while.
Also, a problem he has is that he has now committed to 7 books, and it has been a long time. 7 books. It started off with 3, but then it expanded, and now for years it has been 7 books. And so he's got 2 books to write the rest of the story, and maybe it won't be achievable in 2 books. So there's the challenge of, does he announce another book where it would be 8 books in total, or does he try and condense the story as much as possible to fit into the remaining 2 books?
Well, I think that's, second Harry Potter reference of the episode. That's the difference between doing what Rowling did, which is building this very structured world. Like, they don't go to that many places. You kind of get a very small glimpse of it. And what George has done, which is build this huge world, and you go out and see all of it, you then leave yourself more work down the line, rather than saying, well, we know everything happens at Hogwarts because that is the only place.
It works in both ways, I guess. He's more things that he wants to show us, but he also has more a lot more possibilities in the ways that in where he can finish the story. Of course, we know that there's something that's going to happen at the wall that is going to be interesting, and Personally, I seriously doubt that the White Walkers will march on King's Landing without some sort of army finding them, maybe at the neck or something like that. Moat Cailin could be an epic last stand for everything.
Moat Cailin's in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it is, but it's still like you still have like the marshes and everything next to all the Cranach men live. I mean, it could still work.
Enter the massive army led by Howland Reed and Victarion Greyjoy.
Yeah, with his flaming arm.
Something I wanted to talk about for the season review. So, with the season, there have been some characters missing from this season. So, Bran, of course, the Greyjoys have been missing that plot line. Is there anything else that I've missed?
Nothing, I think, that was already in the show. Obviously, they missed out a lot of stuff that isn't in the show at all.
Yeah, Strongbow was.
So characters that could... Well, I know that the Greyjoys will be back next season, but there's still debate over whether Bran will be back next year.
I think Bran was just... well, they may have changed, but certainly originally they were just talking that he was away for 1 season, because... I don't think... I think he has a vaguely similar plotline to Arya of kind of him learning new things, which I think is, especially with him when it's kind of all in the mind, is going to be almost very difficult to show on screen and wouldn't add much. Seeing him learning how to become this awesome warg isn't the same as... doesn't give you more than just him being an awesome warg all of a sudden having disappeared for a year.
Yeah, but in the same sense, at the same time, I think that kind of TV show-esque things. I mean, Bran is too much of a spoiler. He can essentially know everything by the time we get back to him. So should he be included in Season 6, or should he be included in Season 7, just to put everything on point and make it accelerate the story towards its end?
Well, I think that very much depends on what Bran does. We kind of vaguely assuming that he spends, a large amount of time with Bloodraven, and kind of hanging around up there, and that's kind of vaguely where he stays. We don't actually know that. Same way we kind of assume there's not going to with the Faceless Men. Kind of Bran could have a storyline that directly converges on the others, rather than him staying separate until the end of the book, if that makes sense.
Like what you were saying, Patrick, that he maybe knows too much now, Bran, or there will be a point where he knows all the important thread points of the story, that maybe that makes him too knowledgeable to come back to the books and the TV show, or maybe he would appear in some form in the future, but not as a character, not as Bran Stark. So that's why I was thinking that he wouldn't be back, but then I did read some rumours about a possible casting that implies that he might be back.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that personally I also do a bit of role-playing and GMing, like being storyteller, and usually when people get that sort of abilities, like almost all-powerful abilities, they usually tend to slowly, like, edge them out of the story. Give the person who's playing it a new character instead, because first of all powerful characters does not make the story interesting. It actually just detract from the narrative. And second of all, I think it's just too difficult to keep everything in line, like with somebody who would essentially know. I don't actually think in the books that Bran will come back. I think he will take over Bloodraven's role and his seat, and that's where he's going to stay. I think he might help people on his throne, but I don't think he's ever going to come back. I think he's essentially dead.
One of my favourite ideas about the books is that, so you know how all of the chapters in the books are limited third person, apart from that one Victorian chapter which isn't for some reason. The idea that actually they're all told from Bran's perspective. Bran is effectively telling the story through each of these kind of people's different minds, which is, I think the only evidence of that, apart from it's cool, is that Victorian chapter where for the last couple of paragraphs it's just completely omniscient. You can see everyone's thoughts, which is strange.
It's not impossible, but it seems like for me there's been no evidence that people can walk into people from that great of distances without there being some sort of weirwood tree in the vicinity or something like that. I mean, it would be a great leap of his powers. They would then need him to be in book 6 to show that Bran is evolving to be like the best, like the strongest gods of all the old gods. Essentially, that would be the only way it could happen. Yeah, I'm essentially just saying that it's not impossible, but it's unlikely in my point of view.
It would be a way of dealing with his character that doesn't lead to him becoming overpowered. The idea that he can't, you don't see him controlling people as much as just being able to see things, I guess. You just kind of up that side of his powers and ignore the fact that he can walk into people.
So he's not omniscient, he's omnipresent.
No, he's omniscient, he's not omnipresent. So he can see everything, he's not omnipotent, he's omniscient.
Omnipotent, oh yeah, omnipotent, yeah, that's what.
So he can see everything, he can't act, as it were.
It feels like Season 5 has been A Dance with Dragons and Feast Before Crows combined, but it feels like there's still a lot of content that they can use from those books for Season 6. Like Gilly and Sam travelling together to Old Town. They might introduce Arya and Martell. I'm not sure if she's been written off completely, or is it maybe she could come back as
in the show, Trystane is explicitly stated to be the heir to Dorne, so if Arianne existed, she would have to be younger than Trystane, who is like 10 years younger than her in the books. No, maybe not that much, but he's the third child.
Yeah, it's definitely that much, because, Arianne is a woman grown and has sex right and left, but
in the books that could just mean she's 15 years old.
I think she's older than that. She seems to have a better grasp of her sexuality than a 15-year-old. At least that's how I feel it. But then Trystane is about the same age as Marcella, and she's definitely...
Yeah, she's like 8, isn't she?
Oh, she's 10 or something, but that's... Yeah, by the time we...
So yeah, it probably is all of 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
I still feel like they've maybe left some room that they could possibly revisit her character, or even the Aegon storyline from A Dance with Dragons. I'm not sure if that's completely left behind.
No, I think even, I'm not saying it's likely to happen, but even the Lady Stoneheart storyline you could still bring back in at this stage. I'm not saying it's at all likely, but I don't think anything's off the table yet. But I don't know, I'd be surprised if they brought in Baby Aegon, because, they were probably a character short this season, so it would have helped.
Yeah, but, okay, so let's do it then. Talk about the specific plots, just dead or alive, about specific plots we think has been cut out, like Stoneheart, dead or alive, or undead.
I feel that because it's been such a long time that I don't think she will be back. I'm sure that they have said that she won't be back, she won't come back as Lady Stoneheart, so I don't think she'll come back on the TV show.
I think, by now I think it would be very Deus Ex Machina if she kind of suddenly shows up. I think they had a chance right up until the credits rolled on this season, but I think now it would just be it's too late.
I would say Season 4, that was probably their last chance, the end of Season 4, but this season I feel like it would still be irrelevant now if she were to come back.
Yeah.
But the show might have just dropped Brotherhood Without Banners, but we don't know what they're up to in the show. They might just have said it's one storyline too many, they don't add anything in the long run.
Yeah.
But
So also then, that puts us right into it. Brotherhood Without Banners, dead or alive?
I hope they're still alive. I hope they're still involved. If not, it's quite bad writing. But I don't know. My heart says alive. My head says dead.
I think they will be back, but I can't think which character will interact with them. Because it depends where Jaime's storyline goes from next season. Another plotline which could be quite exciting next year, I guess that would be the King's Queen's Moot scenes with the Greyjoys. So that could fill a lot of the episodes as a good running arc for the Greyjoys next season. But
yeah, so you're thinking that the Iron Islands is still alive?
Definitely, yep. I'm sure that will be back next season, possibly with the announcement of the death of Balon, the Queen's Moot that will take place. But beyond that point, I'm not sure where the story is going.
No, I'm not sure either, because where did Stannis get all his fervor from, if not all of his leeches dying? Or his offerings coming true. It would just seem sort of meh that Balon would die after Stannis apparently has been killed.
Because Balon clearly deserves to win the War of the Five Kings with his excellent military mind.
Sure. I mean, my love for Victorian does not extend to all of the Greyjoys, I have to say. I mean, Balon specifically has absolutely no sense of timing, or maybe he does, but he's not very good at the execution, at least.
Yeah, but if you ignore Balon, who's just a cunt, you kind of get pardon French. You kind of Crow's Eye is awesome. Usher is awesome. Theon, not so much.
Should we honestly talk about Crow's Eye? He is not awesome. He's horrible. He is the most horrible character in the books. I mean, from everything we've theorized about him. I mean, creaking door and adultery with family and whatever, or with sister-in-laws and stuff like that.
I mean, that's not worse than Ramsay. If you're you can argue he's not a good guy, which he definitely isn't. But Ramsay definitely creaked Theon's door.
Are you saying that he might have raped Theon?
Yeah, I think he did.
I think well, I don't think that he did, but I think that he could.
Well, not necessarily raped as such. In the same way, Crow's Eye didn't necessarily rape as such. I think there was some kind of psychosexual abuse there, other than just chopping off his willy willy. As apparently I come across.
I remember when either Ramsay was on his knees or Theon was on his knees at the time on one of the episodes, one of the earlier episodes, and I thought it was going there.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I vaguely remember thinking that as well. Also.
Okay. Well, that's good. I like that people saw something different than me, at least. But also, I saw sometimes I just see things at its face value. So yeah, I guess I'm too gullible. But yeah, I mean, I still think that molesting your little brother, as the theory goes with a creaking door, is worse than yeah.
But that's a theme throughout the books. There's so the Greyjoys, Daenerys and Viserys, sort of the theory about Joffrey and Tommen, and
what?
That's right. Haven't you heard that theory? That
no.
Because
no, don't you don't need to say anything more. I don't need to hear about that. Oh my god. Well, and thank God he's dead.
So incest is very popular within the books, among a lot of the families, it seems.
I never thought about what's okay. Now I need to hear it. Okay, what is the reason why they think that?
Well, it derives from the scene between, well, not the scene, it was that chapter, where it's Tywin's funeral, Tommen cries, leaves the room, Jaime consults him, and Tommen says something like, sometimes I would go inside to hide from Joffrey or something, and then people believed that, well, at that point Cersei cuts him off as well, and at that point people believed that he was going to say when Tommen hurt me or abused me, for example.
But I mean, Joffrey, it's not a big leap to assume that Joffrey abused him in many, many, many ways. I don't know. It's something I've heard before. It's not something I've put.
What? Sexually abusing him?
Well, I mean, yeah, so that's the implication that people take. Joffrey definitely physically abused him. That's not a big leap in any way.
But in the books, there hasn't been any sort of indication that his abuse is sexually motivated of the people he abuses.
I think it's that it's that fine line, which is an argument George doesn't actually have to draw. The line where sexual abuse is a power move, like more than anything else.
Yeah, I know the theory about what abuse usually is motivated by.
Yeah.
But still, there would be some sort of indicator that he like they did in the show with Meryn Trent, that he gets off on hurting girls or something like that. It doesn't seem like specifically that. It seems like he essentially just likes to express power towards people, not necessarily sexual, just humiliate them in any sense that he can, or hurt them when he feels like he needs to assert himself. I don't think that I've ever seen Joffrey, or ever seen Joffrey as a person that had a sexual motivation, sexual / rape motivation behind his actions.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a leap, and it's the same leap we kind of, well, not quite the same, but I mean the same leap you'd make that I just made. I've completely forgotten what I said. But I mean, it's kind of the same leap as the creaking door, like and the same leap as Ramsay and Theon. It's not a key plot point in any way. It's just people assume this character, as they know him, might do that. I'm not certain I particularly believe the Joffrey one, but I think.
But I just better believe Euron Crowseye, because the way it's described is, I mean, there's plenty of reasons why Tommen would digress into his own mind from what Joffrey is known to do in the books, as we've seen him do in the books. And there's plenty of reasons why Theon would be scarred for life with whatever Ramsay's done with him. But what Aaron is talking about is something different. There's been no indication that Euron is the sort of person that tortures people or is overtly malicious in his acts towards people. He's more of a schemer, more of like the evil rogue. He's not necessarily a chaotic evil person. He's more of he's essentially, doesn't seem like he would be in the same group as Ramsay or Joffrey, who are overtly malicious and evil in the way they act. Well, maybe not evil, but malicious at least. I mean, Joffrey has never felt a situation where he is undeniably the lowest of the low in hierarchical sense. He's always been born into power and has had the promise of power whenever
he's always been going to be the king, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He's Simba, evil Simba.
Well, he is a lion.
Yeah, he is evil Simba. That's not even a. So yeah, but I mean, so I can see why those two are a bit more, but Ramsay is still he still wants to assert power because he wants to feel more confident and feel better with himself by making other people feel bad. That's essentially how he does it, but it's still a power thing, a power over specific people that he craves as Joffrey as well. So I would liken Joffrey and Ramsay more to each other than I would liken Euron specifically, because Euron is, at least as we've seen him as of now, his motivations are not so much power over specific people. It is power in general. Like, I seriously think that he wants to rule the world at some point. Or what do you think?
I think it's a fair point. I think they're kind of... I mean, yeah, with Euron, we don't actually know all that much about him, I guess. We see... yeah, I don't know. I don't have a logical answer to that. That is worth saying.
Okay, so no logical answers to my non-logical assumption. So, Glenn, is that because you've seen the casting for next season?
Well,
That
I
you-
haven't.
you're pretty sure?
I'm sure that I've read somewhere, maybe on the podcast of Ice and Fire forums, that something about a scene involving. Oh, are you talking about Bran, or is it? Oh, the
No,
Greyjoys. The Greyjoys.
Greyjoy. Yeah.
I'm sure I've read something about the Kingsmoot will definitely be for next season. I
Okay.
can't remember where, but I'm sure I've read something along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's something mentioned in the casting rumours. I don't know if we want to go too much into them, but there's an implication that people have kind of led to, we think Euron is going to be involved.
Okay.
And I think, there's enough, not that I'm saying they will, because obviously they need to get to the end game, but actually there's enough stuff that can happen with certain people's storylines that they could still tread over a lot of Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons stuff in season 6. What with the Gravedigger, and you could throw all of the Kingsmoot in there.
A lot
See
of things to hopefully look forward to next season. I guess there's still the problem of spoiling the Cersei storyline, I guess what's happening with Jon.
Yeah.
I guess they could revisit the chapters from A Dance with Dragons for Arya, so not much of a spoiler. I can imagine that they'll stretch what they have from A Dance with Dragons over the next season.
Yeah, let's probably stretch Arya's storyline.
But I think we've probably got to assume at this stage that they're shooting for 7 seasons, which means that whilst we'd like them to kind of stretch out the Arya storyline, how much character development would that really add? And that, they've got to. The only reason for stretching out is if they need her to not come back to Westeros until season 7.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. They need her to have at least an episode or 2, or maybe 3 of her being blind. The first episode being blind at least, and then the second episode she might even be. That might be where they start showing that she gets her warped dreams as well.
I'm not so sure in the show you'll get anyone other than Bran warging. I think it's too late to introduce that as an idea.
I don't think so, because they're doing the whole thing with Jon. Hopefully they're doing something with Jon and Ghost.
But it would be ridiculous to do that, given that Ghost wasn't anywhere near him in the scene.
He was at the wall at Castle Black. He was just not specifically in the scene.
Yeah, I don't know. They might do, but I think... I don't know, I guess Jon's resurrection is more likely to be either directly at the hands of Mel or, well, I was going to say all the Night's King, but that's a pretty big stretch.
Maybe Mel recognizing that he has other magic in him as well. And that could lead into the next episode where Arya starts streaming the dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then using that to watch through the cat's eyes, maybe to get through that. I'm looking at this through the books and hoping that they do something close to the books at least as solution, but they could go in any direction as they've done before.
Yeah, I don't know. It will be interesting to see. I almost hope that they diverge more and more from the books, so they spoil the books less.
Yeah.
But obviously the end game has to be pretty much the same.
Yeah. Okay, so Stone Dragon, dead or alive?
Stone Dragon as in dragons rising from stone?
Yeah, the dragon rising from stone, the stone dragon rising.
I don't think they would introduce any more dragons in the show.
Okay, how about fAegon then, dead or alive?
I'd love him to be alive, but I don't think he is.
I think they might introduce him, but maybe not with the same name, but something along those lines that maybe even not related to Rhaegar, or, well, I'm just thinking that sort of like how they've done it in the past, that they've had characters that have similar storylines, like Jane Poole and Sansa, but this time they'll have a different character, but like sort of a similar background, like distantly related to Robert Baratheon, for example, or maybe Rhaegar.
So one idea that I've seen is the idea of if what you're looking for is if what you're looking for is just the invasion aspect of it, then actually you could do it with Gendry, which I think would be an interesting way to do it and actually work quite well.
Gendry.
Yeah, so have Gendry, who's completely disappeared, come back and make his claim for the throne, which would work now both Stannis and Remy are dead. Like, he is justifiably the next in line to the throne, and him come back with the Golden Company or something. If you needed that extra military faction in there, that would be the simplest way to include it.
But yeah, I think Gendry is dead. I think he's.
Still
I think
alive.
that's. No, I think he's.
I believe he's still alive.
I don't think the character is dead. Like literally dead. I mean, storyline is dead with Gendry. I think I can't see how they can manage to bring him back after 2 seasons of literally nothing.
But I think he was enough of a major character that you could bring him back. In the same way, I think you wouldn't need much explanation if just Benjen were to show up. I mean, like they invoked him in the last episode of the season. I don't think there was anyone going, "Who is Benjen?" And he was in 2 episodes or something. I just can't see, apart from, unless you have fAegon as coming back as Aegon, you either introduce a new Aegon character, or Gendry's the only other person I can see legitimately leading an army to invade Westeros.
I can picture Gendry as well, if they do want to go with that route of the storyline, rather than introducing a new character. They've already got the backstory for of course Gendry from the first 2 seasons.
Plus, plus it's the amount of, an actor who people will recognise coming back. I think introducing more and more cast members isn't... If we assume that Aegon isn't going to rise to the throne at any point, at least in the show, then there's not much point introducing him for just kind of half a season.
Yeah.
Even though I do think it's strange that... even if we assume he's not going to play a big role in the endgame in the books, I just think it's very strange they left out someone coming back claiming to be the kind of... who has... because he's an interesting character because he has a more legitimate claim than Dany. I think that's quite an interesting storyline, but...
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Varys doesn't make much sense without him.
No, the way Varys has been portrayed in the show, it sort of cements my feelings about Aegon. Why would he specifically go to Marine and be with Tyrion if it wasn't that he's actually throwing his lot in with Dany and Tyrion?
Oh, I agree, and that's kind of what makes me think it's unlikely that fAegon will appear.
Yeah, that's what.
But I just think it doesn't make for Varys' entire plan to just be, secretly helping Dany, but in no way that you actually see in the show. It's not much in the way of a twist, and it doesn't... I don't know, to me it doesn't add a huge amount to the show.
No. But I don't think he would necessarily help Gendry. Or do you think he's...
I don't think he would. I think he as a character is sold unless there's some ridiculous plot twist where he's in ring to sabotage Dany and he's still on the side of Aegon. I think
maybe Ilaria, the reason why Ilaria wasn't there was that he was actually training Gendry to become like a military leader somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think I'd like to see Gendry back in the show because I like the actor and I think the character's interesting, but I don't think it's necessarily likely.
Yeah, we need to have like Arya and Gendry connect again at some point when they're both a bit more mature.
Well, you could have the interesting dynamic of Jon marrying Dany, claiming the throne, Arya marrying Gendry, claiming the throne, and I don't know, Ramsay claiming the throne, Sansa marrying someone.
Yeah, maybe. I don't see how Arya specifically is going to be grasping towards the throne.
No, I don't. It's not something I thought was likely in any way. But
I mean, Gendry might be molded into becoming some sort of figurehead for some army or some interests.
Yeah.
But Arya is way too headstrong and doesn't care about stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I completely. I think that's kind of why. That's kind of why I think Gendry would be interesting, because Gendry himself has absolutely no desire towards the throne, but he's kind of got nothing else to do. But he's in a situation where he could be manipulated into being a kind of pawn on the throne for Ilario and Varys.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he might be interested in having a greater connection to his father, like many boys without a father do. So I see that point. I see the way they could move that as a point of him taking up the mantle that his father of his father's rule as the true-born son of or almost the true-born son of Robert Baratheon.
We could conclude the episode with just talking about our, first of all, the favourite moment from the season and least favourite moment of the season. But I'm guessing that you've sort of already talked about it already, what you thought was the best moment and the worst moment. But what about you, Patrick? Any particular standouts?
Well, I guess I liked.
Other than Hardrome, I guess. The Hardrome.
Yeah, well, I guess I liked the Janice Slint head chopping. That was good.
Oh yeah, that was my favourite Jon chapter from A Dance with Dragons.
Yeah, because it showed that he's actually willing to do whatever needs to be done, and Janice Slint is a bitch that needs to be slapped. So that was very satisfying as well. So yeah, I like that. And also, well, I enjoyed the brief moment where Taine's boobs were very nice. That was very good as well.
Oh yeah, you got to see that more than once too.
Yeah. So I think those two might be the highlights. And I'm not saying that I think that Hardhome's scene was necessarily, although it was great, but I mean the character building. I mean, they had a character in there that people really, really liked, started liking immediately, and then the character died right away, and that had an impact on a lot of people. That's good storytelling right there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I really liked that specific scene, and then also the actress there was Danish, so it makes sense that it would be the best acting moment in the season, right? It's usually Danish people are better at stuff like that.
In terms of volume of acting, British actors win.
Yeah, you go quantity over quality, right?
If you had to give, Emmy for Best Actor in Game of Thrones this season, a very specific category, who would you give it to?
Well, I'm thinking the Nahidi, but I'm not sure, because I'm just thinking maybe that's the most obvious one. but I don't think that Tyrion, well, Peter Dinklage, or any of the other cast members did anything specific or had any standout scenes, so that's why I'm thinking Lena Headey.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn between the three. I mean, it takes good acting to become a light character, and then in a span of 15 minutes, that takes a lot. I mean, Pascal last season did that quite quickly as well. But other than that, it's been Peter Dinklage essentially that's been able to win the audience over immediately. So in that sense, I guess I'll give a nomination at least for the Danish actress. But the true truly torn between is the one who's playing what's he called? What is he called? The Dark Maester, or the
Qyburn.
Qyburn. The guy playing Qyburn.
He
It's really, really good. I mean, that's like on point with my Qyburn, the way I see him. So that was really good. And yeah, Lena Headey, she needs to get a mention at least. But I guess I would choose Qyburn because he's been overall very, very good in all of his scenes. He's done everything. He hasn't done anything wrong acting wise in this whole season. So I would give him an Emmy. Especially the scene he does with when he comes to visit Cersei and it says like the work continues. That was really good. I like that.
I hadn't thought about that actually. Ask this question about. I think Stephen Delane playing Stannis. I think he just did an excellent job this season. I think actually all of that allowed whatever Shireen actress's name is. And obviously whoever played Tyene is clearly phenomenal.
But that's not maybe an Emmy she would get some sort of a semi-porn statuette that like an Oscar with a lot of boobs on.
I was actually just insulting her acting, that didn't even get to me. But yeah, she deserves a lot of her boobs. This is why we need women on this podcast.
One of my favourite scenes from the episode, it's it'll sound weird, but I really enjoyed the scene in episode 3 when Tommen and Marjorie were sleeping together, but not because of that, because Marjorie starts mentioning Joffrey, and Tommen says something like, "I don't regret it at all," or "I don't miss him at all," and I thought that gives evidence to my theory all along. So ever since I've read the books, I've always had this theory that Tommen was involved in the killing of Joffrey, or the poisoning of Joffrey. And I've said this all along, like made some posts about it, but no one ever seems to agree or share this theory with me. And I think I might have seen it in one of the podcasts as well. But then just that one scene that made me think maybe the showrunners are onto that idea as well, and maybe that's why they've aged up the character too.
I personally think that the reason they aged him up was so he could have sex with Marjorie, especially because Natalie Dormer is like twice
his age.
Twice his age, yeah. So yeah.
They aged everyone up, didn't they? Because they added like 5 years after Robert's Rebellion, between Robert's Rebellion and the beginning of the books, because they needed Dany to be old enough, basically.
Yeah, that's right. But the age difference
Tommen
between
at the start of the season, well, season 1 of Game of Thrones, I
That's
think
right.
he's 5 years old.
Yeah, that's very true.
yeah. So the difference there, it's a bit not jarring, but it's apparent at least that there's a difference there, and I think that's essentially because they can't have a minor having sex with a grown woman, even just alluded to. That'd be
No.
wrong.
That's right, the actor is 17 years old, and he did film the scenes undercover, but he was wearing tracky bottoms. I remember reading an interview about that.
To be fair, if you only saw his top half, it would be quite weird if he was just naked.
I mean, yeah.
To decide that he needed to get into the character for scene.
Yeah, I'm a method actor, especially in the sex scenes.
Very Viggo Mortensen, another Danish actor.
Yeah, he does actually do a lot of method acting. That's cool. But yeah.
So finally, Sam, what would you say is your favourite scene of the season?
You said we're not including Hard Home. Favourite scenes?
Well, not necessarily Hard Home, just not something you've already mentioned in this episode, this discussion.
I did like the Marcella and Jamie scene towards the end. We haven't mentioned Cersei's walk of shame, which absolutely was a standout scene. Really well made. And worst moment, just because we haven't criticised it yet this episode, was that pussy.
Oh,
I
yeah.
would actually say the worst was episode 6 when they try and escape with Marcella.
Oh, that was pretty grim as well.
Oh yeah, that was really horrible. I mean,
this is why I'm glad Arianne wasn't in the show, because they're clearly not capable of portraying that sort of character. Because I'd have been more annoyed if Arianne was portrayed the way Nym was portrayed, than Nym being portrayed as that, if that makes sense.
it was probably the worst fighting scene I've ever seen in any show.
When I did Kraken Cast, I said that it reminded me of like a bunch of scenes I've seen before on like sitcoms or hour-long dramas like Ugly Betty and Glee, because it was so badly choreographed.
Is there a lot of sword fighting in Glee?
Not
Every
sword fight,
episode.
but you know when Bran says, "Oh, you fight like a girl," and then Obara lounges at him, but then stops. That happens a lot in Glee. And that happens a lot in Ugly Betty. Like, you'll have two characters pretend fighting.
Yeah, it was. I agree. It was really horrible.
So much of Dawn was really horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is, it's so stereotypical. It's like the worst portrayal of a Mediterranean type country I've ever seen. Like, it's even worse than those quirky, slightly cool portrayals of Spanish people they did in 80s and 70s fantasy films. I mean, those are always over the top and is always fighting with a what was it called, a rapier and stuff like that. I mean, this is it's not even it's not even quirky. It's not even cute in a way. This is just horrible. The way they butchered a whole area and a whole sort of nationality. They made it uninteresting, bland, unoriginal. Yeah.
The thing that angers me so much is they did Oberyn so well. Like, they captured that character, and Dawn is almost an extension of that, and they just got it wrong.
But the thing is, to begin with, Oberyn was also a bit too poignant. I mean, he was too sexual and very. He doesn't do very much else than threaten Tyrion and have sex with random people.
No. I mean, I agree. His storyline was
quite
so
simple.
much exposition, but
yeah, it was very simple to begin with and very very exposition-y. But I think the turning point for his character in my eyes was when he had the talk with Cersei and they walked through the stairs and he talked about his daughters at home and everything like that. It made him a bit more three-dimensional. And then we go to Dorne, and these daughters of this now three-dimensional character that we ended up loving is simply just as two-dimensional as he was to begin with. They do nothing other than just be a portrayal of all the bad cliches that he sort of got passed through the episodes in his season. I mean, I'm not impressed at all.
Well, I think this is a unique episode, so I don't think that the Kraken cast or the Dragon cast will do an end of season review, but maybe I'll wait until I find out. Maybe they will do that, but if not, then it's great that well, I guess Patrick, you yourself put a lot of work into the Wolfcast episodes every week. I'm guessing you've been on all 10 episodes, is that right?
Yeah, I've been on all 10. The fourth sort of got lost in another because of some editing problems from one of our previous cast members, and he then in turn decided not to watch the show anymore. So that's probably not gonna come out. But yeah, I was on all 10 plus one of the Dragon casts.
Plus this bonus.
Plus the bonus. So
King of podcasts.
yeah, I made the 12 in a sense.
I think I've listened to all of them, and I think I didn't really listen to much of them last year, the Dragoncast or Wolfcast episodes, but
Okay.
it's really great content, some great hosts as well. So my thanks go out to all the Dragoncast, Krakencast, and Wolfcast hosts,
Especially
and
Wolfcast.
especially the editors as well.
Especially Wolfcast.
Especially Wolfcasts, and
That's
especially
right, number one is Wolfcast.
and especially the editor of most of the Wolfcasts.
They deserve the
Hooray.
most credit, exactly.
Yeah,
Oh,
me
yes.
being
Oh, really?
yeah. So I like that guy.
Yeah, he seemed like a good guy.
Yeah, he's good. He's very nice, and he has very good points all the time, and very funny. Yeah,
Thanks, guys, for joining me for this episode.
yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
It was very enjoyable. Have fun editing it.
That's right, I'll look forward to episode 10 when you
When I'm done,
when you
yeah.
finish with that.
Yeah, maybe we could make a deal that you won't publish this episode before I get my, episode 10 out.
That's right, I won't.
Okay, cool.
I'll wait until until episode 10 is done, then I'll find out if there's any other VOKs being published as well before I release this one. And of course I'll need to edit this too, and that could take a week.
Episode 10 is also easier for me to edit. It's just very long, and sometimes we ramble a little, all of us.
I think that tends to happen. That's why I'm so amazed with the Dragon cast episodes that seem so flawless, and they've got well, a lot of the people have a chance to talk about their points and their discussion, and that's with like 9 hosts or 10 hosts or whatever.
Oh,
and that's the finished version that we hear. So we're not.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you, as a person that's joined this season, that's not how it is in real life. I mean, we're pretty good at respecting each other's talking time and speaking time, but I mean, it's nothing close to as proper and neat as the final result as the edited episode is. It's much more chaotic.
That's right. Zach needs a lot of credit for that, so he does well with editing the podcasts.
Yeah, just FYI, in the future, not that we're likely to be doing any Wolfcasts anytime soon, but I am generally fairly happy to edit. But yeah, I've got a lot on my plate at the moment.
Maybe you should just try starting one of the like a separate little topic before getting into a Wolfcast or whatever, because Wolfcast has like a schedule you need to adhere to, where the other podcasts, if you set up a call to arms and start a podcast there, you essentially have as much time as you want to edit it and make it as good as you want.
That's right. When I did a review of The Fly, I did that in November, but then took some time, then didn't release it until January, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that if you want to get into editing podcasts and stuff like that, being an editor, I think it's a good idea to take one of the others just as your first one.
Oh, I mean, I'm more than happy not to be editing. It seemed like a lot of effort, and I was kind of offering to divvy up the load, given that I spend a big chunk of my time sound editing. But, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for the offer. And I might take you up on it on next year.
Oh well, and
Cool.
until next year, signing off from Wolfcast, do we do the Aru?
Yeah, it's the last, so let's do it.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Aru! Thanks again, guys. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Sam.
Well, thanks a lot.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.
No, I don't think we can discount the Harry Potter anymore. It's up there among the greats, even though it is a bit like popular writing. Yeah.
And during this podcast, I've thought about 3 times where I could have mentioned it, but decided not to. End the discussion.
But I think whichever way you slice it, it's an important work of fantasy, because it's a big work of fantasy. I mean, well, actually, The Lord of the Rings is a very, very well-written universe, but part of the reason it's so significant is because it's so popular, right?
I think both of them have one thing that they have in common, is that they sort of kicked off a subgenre of their own. Well, Tolkien kicked off a whole genre of his own, more or less, with him and the writer, the author of the Narnia series. Those two essentially kicked off the modern fantasy.
Certainly as an epic, as the idea of writing, a fantasy kind of series. The idea that you can tell that you can build these huge worlds around it.
Yeah, but beforehand it was mostly, set in our world, set in this world where there's semi-fictional, factual characters that might or might not have been, but at least been in real history, but at least feels like they could have existed in our history. Where Tolkien and the whole Middle-earth and Narnia, all those, they're larger than life. They have a world separate from ours that doesn't abide with the same rules. They don't live to the same rules, and they have an epic story that sweeps you up better than most of the history lessons you've had in school, at least. So yeah, like in that sense, I guess that Rowling has done the same. Actually, build a separate world from our own that is larger than life, that sweeps you up and wants you to read more and be part of this different world.
Which is sad, because that means no Mads Mikkelsen as Victorian, or Crozai even, sorry. Who would be the greatest casting.
Because he's Danish.
Exactly.
No other
He
reason.
must be looking for a job now,
What do you mean?
because Hannibal has been cancelled.
Oh, really?
I never actually saw Hannibal. I kept meaning to, but I
No.
didn't get around to that.
A lot of people said good things about it, but
I've
I'm
watched
not.
a few episodes, but I never really got into it enough to keep watching. But it's something
Yeah.
I still want to watch.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
that much. I'm not that much into the whole Hannibal Lecter Silence of the Lambs thing. I think it's good enough, but it's not as good as some other things I really enjoy.
That's right. It was announced this week that season 3, the finale of season 3, that will be the final episode of Hannibal due to viewing. So not enough watchers of the show.
Yeah, it's one of the things that was really well reviewed but not watched, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched one episode of it, and then it just made me really want to rewatch The Hunt, so I went and watched that instead. I was going to look at English people if you're accusing, because the Americans are still scared of the English, because we used to own them.
But you know what? There is a ranking of probable villains in a movie, in an action movie. First of all, yeah, you have the Brits. Second of all, you have nowadays it's Asians, and third, then it's Middle Eastern people, and then it's Eastern European to sit at the bottom there. That's usually when you go through the list. It's usually one of those four.
Mm. Well, I think unless you're taken, in which case it's just anyone in Europe is a bad person.
Yeah, well, we are bad people.
We are bad people, and that's why we need Liam Neeson to come over and beat all of us up.
Who's also European. So.
Shh. He's Irish. The Americans like the Irish.
The Irish, yeah. They drink.